It's Mondays with Mooch. Steve Mariucci here on the program. How are you, Steve?
Rich, I've been looking forward to this all night long. I'm doing great. Can't wait to talk with you each Monday.
Yeah, me too, Steve. I'm thrilled about that. So let's start with the clock management.
Okay.
With why in the world would Tom Coughlin go ahead and do something like that last night, Steve?
Okay. All right. Let's clarify all
Let's
of this.
walk me through it.
I was watching that when Tom came out. You know, this is a sport of accountability, and this is exactly why the Giants have won a couple Super Bowls lately, because you see Tom Coughlin taking full responsibility. Tom Coughlin doesn't call the plays, okay? He's like Pete Carroll having his offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevell, call plays, remember? And then the next press conference was with Eli, and he took full responsibility. So, you know, and saying, it's on me, I should have done better, blah, blah, blah. Here's what should have happened last night, because I was going to text Tom because I think he got it a little bit wrong. You know, here's what happens. In the 90s, we put a coach to quarterback Gizmo Bob in their helmets, okay? So, you know, before that, the Joe Montanas and the Marinos and all those guys, they had to play the game really on their own. They got the call from the sideline or called their own play, whatever, and they had to understand all of these situations and timeouts and clock and all that on their own. Now, we as coaches can help our quarterbacks out. So from the sidelines, when the Jets were 3rd and goal from the 1, Ben McAdoo, the offensive coordinator, should have said to Eli Manning, all right, Eli, we're going to throw the ball. It's not a bad idea to throw the ball there.
No,
That's okay. You didn't have to just run the football.
Don't throw it away. It's what you're saying is just basically tell him to slide if it's not there.
Yeah,
right?
the information from the coach should have been to Eli. Eli, here's the play. Pass 34, U corner, halfback flat. If it's not there, take a sack. That's exactly what the instructions should have been. If it's not there, take a sack. And it doesn't happen very often, but that is one of the coaching points you would give a quarterback. Just like, hey, if it's not there, throw it away. We'll kick a field goal, whatever that is, okay? You help them out. Well, evidently Eli didn't hear any of that, and he threw it away kind of reactionary. And that's what you do when you're going to get sacked or it's not open. You throw it away. That's what happens 9 times out of 10, maybe more than that. But Ben McAdoo, when he gave the play, should have reminded Eli, hey, if the thing's not there, take a sack, we'll run the clock down and kick the field goal.
So
that's simple.
How does Coughlin turn the page off of something like this? I mean, this is something that leaves a mark for a long time, if not the whole season. If they lose to the Dallas Cowboys at home, they'd lose the season series. That could be the division when it's all said and done.
Well, you know what? Tom he's been on the hot seat forever, right? He lives on the hot seat over there. And so he will find a way to coach this team up and get them ready for next week, and he'll get Victor Cruz back. That'll help. Mm-hmm. And they're a good football. Hey, we all picked Dallas to win, right?
Yeah. But
the Giants really should have won that game. You know what? He coached his team up. I was really impressed with the Giants' effort.
Yeah. Well, but what have you done when you've had a horrible loss to try and move the team forward?
You know, I've had some losses in my day, Rich, but the most horrible and devastating loss probably was my first game as a head coach in the National Football League. All right, I'm this young guy from Cal, and Eddie DeBartolo and Carmen Palsy want me to be the coach of the 49ers. Are you kidding me? So we go to Tampa in my first game. On the 12th play of the game, Steve Young gets a concussion. Okay, out. On the 27th play of the game, Jerry Rice blows his knee out, and then Brent Jones hurt his back, and then our backup quarterback late in the game broke a bone in his back, and Kevin Green got hurt. And it was like, oh my God, what is going on? And we lost that game. We lost our opener, my first game, and I'm in the locker room, and I'm going, oh, what am I going to say to these guys? I should just retire now and go back to Cal. And here's what I said, because it was devastating. And Eddie DeBartolo was in the locker room looking at me, waiting for me to say something that was significant. And I said, all right, we lost round 1 of our title fight, guys. We've got 16 games. We lost round 1. That was it. And it was a tough loss. And we're going to go home, fly all the way across this country, and we'll regroup, and we're going to come out swinging next round. And that's how we have to look at this. I didn't dwell on the injuries. I didn't dwell because we didn't know if these guys were coming back. Steve came back a little bit later, but Jerry was out for the year. But I had to kind of make it sound like, hey, we lost this game, in this game only, and we didn't lose the season, you know. And of course, you know, that team, luckily there were some good veterans on that team. We won the next 11 games, Rich.
Yeah.
But it was a tough loss, and I was at a loss as to what to say to that bunch. But I think they got it when I said we lost round 1 and we're going to come out after a rest and win round 2. And they did.
I got Steve Mariucci, my NFL Network compadre, here on the Rich Eisen Show for Mondays with Mooch, and I'm sure Pete Carroll is saying that to his team right now after that rough loss in St. Louis, where they ran instead of throwing on short yardage, and we could sit here and second guess all of that. But the one thing I want to hit with you is the fact that the game got tied on a 37-yard pass to Lance Kendricks. He was wide open because Dion Bailey falls down, and he's the one who's replacing Cam Chancellor. How does Pete Carroll handle that in a locker room that is probably waiting and knocking on his door and begging to get Cam Chancellor back in the fold somehow? What is Pete Carroll's challenge here?
I know it because people are coming into Pete in his office behind closed doors, and John Schneider. The teammates are saying, hey, we need Cam. We need Cam. He's our fearless leader on defense. It's a tough spot, Rich, because he's got 3 years left on his contract that he just signed 2 years ago. 3 years left. And, yeah, maybe he's outperformed his contract or other guys are getting paid more, whatever that is. But, you know, for management to change a contract because a guy wants to change a contract when there's that much remaining sets a bad precedent. It really does, because there will be another knock on John Schneider's door if he does this. However, you know, you just saw the reason why they need the guy. And he's a good guy. He's 27 years old, and he is their quarterback on defense, so to speak. And so I hope they work something out. I hope they all compromise a little bit and find a way to get him back on the field. They absolutely need him, but I do understand management over there. It's not typical way of doing business. I mean, you wouldn't ask those guys over there for a new contract next year when you still have 3 years left, would you, Rich?
Well, let me try that, Steve. I have an agent for that. No, but I'm wondering if Pete Carroll is looking at these guys and wondering what they're thinking, and some of these guys going up to Pete and just saying, you're part of management, and in a way, that helped us cost the game. And that's a problem moving forward, getting ready for Green Bay. That's a huge game coming up Sunday, Steve.
And then as a coach, and Pete has a lot of that say, okay? And as a coach, whether you're making a bench a quarterback, or you make that decision, or you go for it on fourth down and it doesn't work, I mean, you make these decisions. You got to live with the result, whether they're successful or they're failures. You got to live with the result, and the team's got to have enough trust in you that, hey, you're the boss. You make these decisions. We try to make it work, and if it doesn't, we move on to the next opportunity. And so, you know, Pete will handle it. But you know what? Guess what, Rich? They go to Green Bay next week.
Yeah, I know.
Do you imagine if they're 0-2?
I know. Do you think if that play call at the end of the of overtime in any way, shape, or form was influenced by what happened in the Super Bowl? Does that happen in play calling, Steve?
You know what? I don't know, but maybe the Super Bowl call was influenced by the 1 out of 5 times they tried that during the season, and they got stuffed most of the time. Mm-hmm. And you know what? When you run spread formation shotgun with an offset back on short yardage and goal line, it's not the best formation to gain a yard. It really isn't. You might fool people and have the quarterback scoot out and make a big play, but there's just no power running from that. It's That's one of the things that I don't like about the spread offense and shotgun. When you're short yards and goal line, you just can't slam it in there like you like to.
Steve Mariucci joining me here on the program. Mooch, just take a break. We'll come back in 60 ticks of the clock. I want to talk to you about Peyton Manning in Denver and what happened over the weekend despite the win. If anything that we talked about on game day morning about his reluctance in this offense means anything. That's Steve Mariucci right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Steve Mariucci in our Mondays with Mooch joining me here. We talked about it on game day morning, Steve, and we're going to talk about it on Thursday Night Football's pregame show as the Denver Broncos now go to Kansas City, which looked great in Houston. Is there a problem with Peyton Manning and this Gary Kubiak offense from your estimation?
Well, I don't know if you call it a problem, but they're not in sync yet, and I think that's obvious. I mean, Peyton threw for just 175 yards, and he usually does that in the first half, and no touchdowns again. But, Rich, remember Peyton last season, even in his own offense, struggled a little bit down the stretch. wasn't quite the same, and he's admitted that he has, doesn't feel real good in his fingertips on his throwing hand right now, and so here's a guy who has had 4 neck surgeries, and he's still playing, and at some point you're going to decline in your performance, and I think maybe we're seeing it a little bit right now. Plus, add the fact that this is a new system. And this is not Peyton Manning's going to shotgun, call the plays on the box count. I mean, this is Gary Kubiak's system. They like to run the ball. They like to play under center. Gary likes to call the plays. There's going to be play action. Protections are different. That was the big one for me. But was Peyton sacked 4 times, and Peyton's the best quarterback ever at avoiding the sack. And he looks like they're having protection problems. Maybe he's not changing protections like he used to. So they've got some things to work out.
So how can it work out? I mean, if the legs that the Kubiak system may not that's required of the Kubiak system to run may not be underneath that 18 jersey, almost pushing 40. Steve, what happens?
I think they've got to be able to compromise just a little bit, and Peyton has got to be able to say, hey, coach, these are the ones that I don't feel great about. I can run them, but I'm not as good doing this, and this as I am doing this, and this. And if you want to be an explosive offense, you got to let me do what I can do. He's using Gary's terminology for the most part. I remember they ran past 94 quarterback. He passed left. Okay, maybe we'll do an XO on it or something. And Peyton's throwing the ball from the run, going to the left, and he doinked it in the ground. And I'm going, you know what? He just doesn't do this kind of thing. This is not the kind of Colin Kaepernick kind of offense that Peyton has run for 17 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how the offense progresses. Luckily, they got to win. They got to win because the Ravens' offense wasn't very good. But it looks like they're a different kind of team right now.
Steve Mariucci here on the Rich Eisen Show. Marcus Mariota, boy, did he look spectacular. And on the flip side, Winston looked dreadful. It wasn't even any gray area about the number 2 overall picks in the draft. So how much of coaching up did that require of Tennessee to get Mariota looking like that? Or is that just what he looks like coming out of the box, you think, Steve?
Dick LeBeau left the Steelers and he went over to Tennessee. Did you see some Dick LeBeau influence on that Tennessee defense? Mm-hmm. Oh, my God. Tennessee, their defense surprised me. Mariota surprised me. I'm so happy for him. He threw 4 touchdowns in 1 half. I mean, the kid looked like he's been there for 5 years. And on the other hand, Jameis, who we all thought would play well and they would win the game and the whole thing, he just laid an egg. I texted him last night.
You did?
Yeah, you know what's fun, Rich? When I coach in the Under Armour All-American game every year, so a lot of these kids, I get to know them a little bit then. But then the other thing, he came on my Game Changer show. Mm-hmm. And so you exchange cell phones and you get to know them, and we text back and forth with a lot of these kids, a lot of them. Last night I texted Jameis, and it must have been 1 o'clock in the morning his time over there on the East Coast, right? And I said, hey, a guy named Brett Favre threw a pick 6 on his first throw, a guy that I coached, and it turned out to be okay for him. I said, don't blink. I said, you'll be fine. Just keep swinging. And he texted me back, and he said, Coach, I'm looking at the film right now. I got to get this game behind me. And we're going back and forth. He was really struggling with his performance mentally. I said, hey, listen, your coaches will go through the film. They'll clean up, and they'll talk about all the good and bad, and then you're going to forget about it, and you're going to get on to the Saints tomorrow night. And that's how it's going to be. And he was looking at the film at 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to learn, what happened. So he's got the right idea. You're just going to have to go through some of these, and they're not a very good team on either side of the ball.
Yeah, now next up, he's got to go to the Superdome, which is not an easy place to play in.
No.
To take on a New Orleans team that struggled offensively to put points on the board, and Arizona. I mean, Carson Palmer's 14-2 as a starting quarterback for Arizona, Steve. I mean, how stout do you think Arizona can be?
They look like the real deal, and you're right, though. They got to stay healthy. Ellington got hurt a little bit there, but and it was kind of funny to watch that after the game. Carson Palmer hugged Drew Brees. Right, they both live in Del Mar down there in Southern California, and so in the off seasons. They're great friends, and you're right. If Carson Palmer plays every game, look out. Arizona is for real.
Yeah.
They could win this division.
I'd agree with you. So we're going to end our segment with something that I like this idea.
Is this your idea?
No, it's not. But I'm going to take, no, it's not Susie's either. It's our coordinating producer, Drew Olmire's idea. But I was, if you didn't ask me point blank, take it as if it was my own. But what makes Mooch most mad? Hashtag WMMMM. What you saw this week. What made Mooch most mad for week number one?
Other than not enough Parmesan cheese on my spaghetti? Okay, so what makes me mad?
What made Mooch most mad? Hashtag WMMMM.
The heck out of me, Rich.
What
all
is
right?
Mm-hmm.
We have this greatest game that there is in sport, all right, in the whole world, in my humble opinion. And we practice and we train and we coach and teach and oh boy. And then when guys play the game, and I know it's a violent contact sport, and you know there's a lot of testosterone on the field.
Mm-hmm.
When guys lose their temper and they get the penalty or they get a suspension or they get an ejection, that really, am I allowed to say pisses me off on your show?
You just did. Go for it.
That really bothers me, Rich. That really bothers me when guys fight and they lose their cool, because this is not the street. This is a game where there's sportsmanship and there's rules and you got to follow it. And anything you do stupid will hurt your team. That's what makes me mad.
Like Mincy?
We saw it again first day.
Yeah.
We saw Jeremy Mincy. All right? In the last drive, Dallas Cowboy punched the guy from the Giants. Why don't you just help him win the game? I mean, that was so stupid, I can't even tell you. And then we see Pac-Man over there against the Raiders with my guy, Amari Cooper. He played in the Under Armour game, too. And he rips his helmet off, and then he shoves his helmet down into his head down into the helmet. What are you thinking? This stuff is irritating to me. When guys lose their temper, they lose their cool, and they hurt their football team. There's no excuse for it, Rich.
I loved it, Steve. You're on your soapbox.
Can I tell you a story? Can I tell you? Do I have another minute?
You got a minute. You're sure? Go for it.
Because when I was coaching, remember we just talked about it earlier segment about my first game with the Niners. We lost, right? Oh my God!
Mm-hmm.
Well, that next practice, practice week, we had guys kind of chippy and fighting and kind of mad because we lost and this and that. And I had a guy named Kevin Gogan. Remember Gog?
Oh, of course.
6'8", 348 pounds before lunch, and he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You should find it. Have your crack crew find the picture. Mm-hmm. He was on the cover with a guy's leg in his mouth, and he says meanest man in football, or dirtiest man, or something like that. And you know what? He was animal. He was an animal. So he was fighting in practice because he liked to do that, and I stopped the practice and I said, all right, that's it. I'm getting tired of this shoving around practice, baloney, fighting and all this stuff. Next guy that fights is going to piss me off. And if you do this in a game and it hurts us and you get a penalty or whatever, you're coming out. I'm throwing you off the field. And so maybe it was just an idle threat, right? Yep. We go to the game against the Rams. First quarter, Gogan gets in a fight with one of the Ram defensive linemen. He goes back to the huddle, and I'm going, oh, my God, I have a decision to make. Because I told the team, if there's a fight, sure, I'm pulling you out of the game.
And?
This is Gogan. So I said, I grabbed the guy next to me that was a backup guard. Go in for Gogan. Get him out of the game. And Gogan wouldn't come out of the huddle. He wouldn't come out of the huddle. He was going to punch the guy that came in. And he looked at me, and I said, get over here, Gogan. And he came off. This is right during a drive. And he gets in my face. What are you doing, Mooch? I said, you're out of the game. You got us a penalty. I said you were going to come out. You're out. You're out. Get out. And I thought he was going to just start wailing on me right on the sidelines. And luckily, I had a good relationship with him because we'd play ping pong in training camp. Anyway, so he would come to me every now and then and go, when are you putting me back in? I said, I'll put you back in when I calm down. I'm not calmed down yet. Get out of my face. I didn't put him back in, Rich, until the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter. And that was a risky deal that I did because we luckily won the game with Jim Druckenmiller, okay? But had we lost, pulling out one my best lineman, I would have looked a fool, right?
Hey, Mooch.
But if I didn't pull him out, I would have looked a fool because I said to the team I would do that. You got to do what you say. And I had to kind of pick on the bully a little bit. And I was lucky that he didn't bully me around on the sidelines. But you know what? He didn't fight anymore after that.
Mooch, I love you. Thanks for calling in. We'll chat. We'll chat soon.
You bet.
You
Thanks,
bet. Mondays with Mooch.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.